Hello, hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to View from Love. I am your host, Allie Ray, here with my beloved co-host, Lou Martin. Hello, Lou.
Hi,
Hi.
Ali. Hi.
We are so excited to have you join us on this podcast journey of extraordinary love. Today's guest is truly a Renaissance man. I'm very, very excited to introduce you all to him. He is a professional musician, a prolific painter and gallery owner, a novelist, and a master Chinese herbalist. Yes, indeed, this is true. And I can testify to this personally because I know him and have had the honor and pleasure of seeing him perform live, seeing his paintings, his lovely paintings, reading his novels, and partaking in his many tonic elixirs and herbal remedies. So I am so delighted to share him with the world. Please welcome Rehmannia Dean Thomas. Hi, how are you
Yeah,
today? Thank you for being with us.
oh, it's a pleasure, and I appreciate those kind statements. It's about half true.
Oh, oh, I feel like it's entirely true. I'm looking forward to have you tell our amazing audience just about your journey. You know, where you're from, how you got into the music. You know, how did all of these talents start arising from you?
I really appreciate your question, Ellie, and asking me to explain this because I don't consider myself that my life as being that remarkable, really. If I were asked to write a book about it or something, I think it would wind up being a little too mundane in some regards. But in other regards, there's some things about it that are kind of trippy. One of them is the fact that I grew up in Shively, Kentucky. And so I was born in, a place where a person isn't likely to actually get out of there, to tell you the truth. But I don't know what it really was. There were a number of factors. My parents were very progressive. They danced to Ray Charles records, and I would get up in the night and go down and sneak down and watch them dancing the Ray Charles records. But that created the ire of the community toward them. And so our family was considered to be commies. And so we grew up under kind of we were spied on and all kinds of stuff. And the neighbors, of course, hated us. And then my parents got divorced when I was 6 years old, which is another thing you don't do in Kentucky. So my mother was suddenly, the outcast woman who lived up on the hill, who was now like down among the throngs of the other rednecks. And the knives came out for my mom, and she had the worst time. I remember her coming home in her old Pontiac Le Mans. So she had this kind of hot rod looking car. She'd come home and get out of the car, and she'd just be going, oh, like this, and come in and just go up in her room and say, I don't want to talk to anybody. Go in her room, put on this old faded nightgown, and come out and sit at the dining room table with a beer and a cigarette and just stare at the wall. And it was like that, like every night. And I watched her go through a really severe menopausal shift. And when I saw this occur as a boy, I said, what happened to my beautiful mother? I mean, she just hardened to the world, right? And it had a physiological effect on her. And I sought to understand what happened. And I think that was the original impetus of my interest in getting into this whole thing is what went on with my mother. And it did lead me to a cosmic question, that I wanted to understand this and maybe in my own way help if possible, because I wished I could have helped my mother at the time. I really wished I could. There was something I could have done, but I really couldn't at the time. Well, I could have given her more love and more, nurturing, and that would have helped her. But we didn't know as kids. I would try and go and sit beside her at the table, and she just seemed like she wanted to be in her own world. So, but that was the original impetus of my interest, in being a healer, was to help my mother then. And so many years later, I have the great opportunity of having been able to really delve in to exactly what she was going through, and that has now become a big focus of my work. Is midlife changes for men and women. Men go through andropause as well. And so I want to understand this and see it as a point of enlightenment, a point of advancement, rather than backtracking. It's an evolutionary stage that has its own level of a new level, and to find out what that is and how to promote it in our society, because I'm not seeing it being promoted. I'm not seeing people getting the answers they need. People seem to be left out. This is a society for young people, and so that was the original thing. So then, growing up in Kentucky, you wanted to ask me a little bit about how I became kind of multidimensional in my creative expression. Well, I had nothing else to do there. I wasn't going to go and be the normal kid like the other kids on the block. I just wasn't interested. I tried, but I found myself, there was a forest nearby. So we lived in the Ohio River Valley, and then there was a railroad track. These trains came down 100 miles. We'd stick pennies on the railroad track and flatten them out. And then beyond the railroad track was a very steep bluff of the Ohio River Valley bluff. And it was like cliffs, and then, and there was this forest there that had never been logged. It was old growth forest because of the steep grade. And so I found myself going there every day as a boy and walking alone in the woods. And I would wonder, why aren't my friends out here playing? Why aren't they interested in this? And I suddenly just fell in love with what I call the giant silence, these giant trees that have never been cut. I am just so lucky that within walking distance of my place, there was this original indigenous old growth forest in the American South. And I lost myself in there. And I would go and just sit on this root of this fallen trunk of this giant tree that I would think, how long ago did this tree fall? And how old was it? How many thousands of years did it live before it fell? And what did it see? It saw the Native Americans, sharpening their flints under it, and for their hunting expeditions and making their camps, and I sat there and kind of went into forms of meditation. I didn't know any of this stuff, and this was in the early 1960s. I didn't know about meditation and gurus and all that. I had no idea, but I found myself sitting there all day, just like, oh, wow, in this beautiful space, in this silence. And again, many years later, I recall reading, the work of like Dr. Bruce Lipton and others saying that a child should really be allowed in the first 7 years of their life to just live in a somewhat of a dream state. And in the forest is the perfect place to allow a child to do that. And that's where one of my heroes, Victor Schauberger, the great water wizard who figured out the technology of vorticing water to purify it. He spent his childhood as the only son of the one security guard of the Black Forest in Austria. And his dad gave him the night shift. So he had to go out in the night as a boy and just be in the forest through the cold winters. And that's where he learned, I think, some of his genius was downloaded. Einstein said the same thing. They said, where did you get your equations? He said, I just plucked them out of the universe at like 3 a.m. in the nights when I was in this, what we call twilight revelry.
Yeah.
And so I by that same kind of chance, happened to become a very night-oriented person, and I would go there in the night. And I think that's where some of my subliminal downloads on my love of creativity and my multidimensional creativity probably started there, and my respect for nature and my ability to see things from a spiritual viewpoint definitely started in those woods. But then what happened was, when I was about 9 or 10, we moved, and we moved across town to an area called Newburgh, which was out in the southern dregs, like kind of the swampy dregs of the south side of Louisville. So it was like going from one kind of crappy place to another. But Newburgh in some ways was worse, but it was, in a way, retrospectively, it was better for me, and for strange reasons. But we went there, and we found ourselves living in a little apartment project. It was kind of like an FHA apartment project, where it was a project. I lived in a project with my 2 brothers and my mom. But there was across the way, there was a big flat field that had probably been a cornfield someday, somewhere, but now it was just grass and weeds. And across that field, there was Old Shepherdsville Road. And then across that, there was the giant General Electric plant where they made all of the appliances for General Electric, made all their appliances there. It was called Appliance Park. That was over there. And we happened to live right by the incinerator, and where they got rid of all the garbage. And so I would hear it in the night. I'd be laying in my room, and we lived on the ground floor, and I had a window in my room so I could open it up and just step out onto the ground outside. And there's the cars parked in front right there, like the parking lot. And I would go out in the night and with insomnia, and then I'd walk around the field, in the dewy field, barefooted in the summer times. And I was hearing all this, over there in the factory. I was like, what is all that? So I go walking over one night, and I come up over this dike, like a man-made sort of a flood wall dike thing. And I looked down, there's this moat of just black, oily water that was probably their security fence for the factory. And then there was another little moat, and I couldn't see because of the other bank. I couldn't see down into what was going on. I couldn't see the men working down there, but I could see this giant pile of metal scrap, all mangled, like a giant pile of scrap. And these train cars were coming in. I listened to their whistles coming, their high whistles. And they'd come in there and one, and they would move one train up, and then they'd buttress against it. And then another one would stop. And this big old crane would come over and drop a magnet on the pile of that metal and bring it up, this giant wad of this metal, magnetized, and swing it over the train car, and then disengage the magnet, and the stuff go boom into the train car. They go move the next one up. And this went on all night long.
Wow.
There was this giant red brick smokestack with the smoke just billowing out. They put it in the night. They didn't have it going in the day. They didn't want anybody to see. And so I'd found myself fascinated by this. And by this time I was playing guitar. I'd already been a drummer. I started playing drums when I was about 7. I should tell that story, really.
Yes.
I'll go back to it. But I was already playing guitar by this time because when we moved in the apartment, I couldn't play my drums because the people upstairs yelled about it. So I suddenly had to go to guitar by default when I was 9 years old. We had a little guitar. We had a little Sears Silvertone guitar in the closet that nobody played. I got it out and started playing, kind of reluctantly, actually. But so I started carrying the guitar over there and sitting in the night at like 2 or 3 a.m. and lullabying the factory. And like saying, I wonder if these guys can hear me. I don't know if I'm doing better or whatever, I thought, well, I'm going to play the most beautiful music I can to see if it helps them, those people over there working, and just counterbalance the cacophony with these, and I somehow found out about the myth of Orpheus. So I wanted to play Orphic music, really beautiful music. Anyway, so that's how I started on guitar. But if I can backtrack to the drums, when we were still living out on Dixie Highway out in Shively, I saw a little kid playing drums. So this was I was about 7 years old. And I saw a little kid playing drums on TV, playing jazz drums. I went, oh God, I want to do that. He was about my age. He was brilliant. And I said, there was a television show in Louisville called High Q, and it had people on there who were brilliant. And I would watch this, and this kid was on there playing drums. He's probably a few years older than me. And I said, I'm going to do that. So I went out and I bought so I got a newspaper route. So the kid who came bringing the newspapers every day, he was this little tough little guy, real like looking like he's going to grow up to be a gangster, He's delivering newspapers, right? And he comes to my house and throws a newspaper. I says, hey Billy, come here, man. Can I talk to you? He said, yeah. I said, man, what would you pay me if I delivered all your papers for you? He goes, I'll give you $0.25 a day. I said, deal. So he brought all the newspapers to me, and I brought them all around our neighborhood. And I got 25 cents a day. And then I walked around and picked up pennies and nickels on the street. I went to the laundromat and looked in the in the washing machines and the dryers and found nickels. And I found quite a lot of money there. Go to playgrounds and get under the things where the people hang on stuff, and you find all kinds of coins in the sand there and stuff where people are hanging upside down. Anyway, I saved up, and so I had saved up about $35. The drum set at Woolco at Kmart was $100. A little Ludwig drum set, $100. And I needed $100. So my dad said, well, if you'll get $50 of it, I'll do the other 50. I said, okay. So I needed $50. I had about 35 by this time, a little less. And they opened up a little bank in the front of the Kmart in the parking lot, the First National Bank. And it was the day they were opening. I was standing there with my bowl of money. I was 7 years old. And I had a yellow Tupperware bowl full of all the change, $2 bills. And I was standing there first in line. And the woman opens the door kind of absentmindedly, goes, oh, and just goes back to the counter. And I go, can I open a savings account? And she goes, oh, and so she takes my money and counts it out, $26.19. I said, wow. So she gives me my little book, I go home and I'm writing in my ledger. Every time I go and make a deposit of $3.50, write it down. I had the $50. And I went back to the bank and I said, I want to close my account. And I put my bowl up on the counter, thinking they were going to put all the change back in there. And she hands me this woman is completely oblivious to where I'm coming from. She just absentmindedly hands me my dollars, my 20s, and a couple of 10s. And I'm like, oh, and I go home and I call my dad and say, Dad, I raised the $50. He goes, for what? I go, for the drum set. He goes, oh, that's good. What now? I go, well, you said you'd pay the other 50 I found this. And he goes, I did. And I said, yeah. So he goes, well, okay. So we went to Kmart and bought the drum set. I have a photograph of myself playing that kit, like the day I got it out on my front yard. I should show it, but I don't have it right with me. Anyway, that's that. So then, yeah, so that's how I got into music. I mean, I had nothing else to do with my life, you know. The worst high school in the country. Literally, they would chain lock the doors in the morning at 8 o'clock.
Oh, we're having a little bit of a technical thing. Hold on. I don't know if you can hear me. If you can hear me, it's freezing on my side. Can you hear me? So hello, everyone. Apologies for some little technical difficulties we had there, but yeah, just getting right back here with Rehmannia about that beautiful moment where he had his childhood drum set. His dream came true.
Yeah, I was able to buy my little blue my little blue Ludwig drum set. Brought it home, had it in the front yard, started to play. I knew a couple of kids from my class, and they came over with their guitars, and we had a little band. It was my first band. We were in the 5th grade, and we played, and the neighbors all came and were watching. And so my first gig was pretty fun, and went from there. You know, but drums has always been my my creative passion. I still have a drum set in my room, and I play every day. And I play jazz. I really enjoy challenging myself with the ultimate, you know. And so I put myself in with some seriously powerful musicians these days, and just ride along and try and get through it. It's quite fun, you know. But I've always wanted to put challenges in front of myself, you know. I've never been comfortable with the complacency, and the minute something becomes complacent, I'm suddenly like, oh, I think I have something Sagittarius somewhere in my chart that makes me go, okay, I'm done with that. I want to do something new that challenges me, you know. Anyway, so yeah, I wound up, okay, so where we were at was, I was in high school, going to Thomas Jefferson High School, very rough place. And that we had moved, now we had moved to Newburgh. And so I found myself in a war zone in this school, and was scared to go to school every day. And then this beautiful woman comes up to me in the hall, and she's the art teacher. Her name's Jane Litchfield, very good friend still, and saved my life pretty much. She came up and said, hey, you look like a creative guy. And I said, yeah, I think so. And she said, well, be in my class. I want you in my art class. I said, great. So she got me in art class, and I did a drawing. And as soon as she looked at my drawing, she sat me down. She said, look, Dean, I'm going to get you out of physical ed and study hall, and you can have 3 hours of art a day. And I was like, wow. So I wound up through my high school years, starting in from the 9th grade through the 4 years of high school. I got to go to art class half a day. And in those days, we had everything we needed, all the paper, the pencils, we even had clay and a spinning wheel. We had canvases we could paint. Art in those days was like back in the late 1970s. There was still a lot of art in the schools and everything. And I got to explore. And so I became really prolific in art. I mean, there were 3 hours a day, you know. And of course, I really liked my teacher and wanted to excel, partly from her enthusiasm, her encouragement. And that helped. I learned, you know, that if someone encourages us, we can do amazing things, you know. That's all we need. And so I had that from her. And so I wound up winning the most awards, maybe of anyone in the country, in my junior year in National Scholastics Art Competition, like a national art competition that happens in the high schools of the country. And I won something like 26 blue ribbons and about 4 gold medals. And I was in the exhibition, like, you know, I had almost my own little section. And because of that, I got a scholarship to an art school. I got a scholarship to the Louisville School of Art. And I was able to suddenly find myself in this school with these students and teachers from all over the world. just this little school out in Anchorage, Kentucky, outside of Louisville. And suddenly I got to see like the erudite side of Louisville, the side where things were good. And I'm find this little country kid, find myself there. I had no sense of self or ego. And I'm just like, wow, look at these amazing, like powerful people up in Italy and places like that, and everything fascinated me. And, I then excelled again in life drawing class, and my teacher, Marianne Currier, a very famous painter, very famous artist. If you look up her work, Marianne Currier, she's in museums all over the world. She was my teacher, and she took me in as her star student and made me like the guy. She said, you stand in the middle of the room and draw big. I want everybody to watch you draw. And that again was encouraging me. So I became very good. I was copying Michelangelo and stuff by the time I was about 15, 16. And then, so then what happened abruptly was, now you're asking me about my life stories on this.
Yes.
Well, we decided to form a little band. So I knew some guys, they were from the New York area, and I really respected them. They were really cool. They were really cool dudes. They're real handsome and exotic, guys, Bruce and Rick. And they said, we're going to start a punk band, because they found out about punk rock. And they said, we're going to start a punk band. So we started this band called No Fun. I was on drums, I got the drums, and we're hashing it out around Louisville, right? And so the Louisville newspaper, which was quite progressive and liberal in those days, liked us. So that we wound up on the front page of the arts section every week, just pictures of us with duct tape taped all over us and sweat flying off like that, just big holes burnt in our t-shirts and stuff. And it was very sensational. And then we were getting really popular. No Fun was getting very popular around Louisville. And these vigilantes came out after us. They were, these rednecks who didn't like us. And so we were playing a gig one night, and these guys come in, some people come in with like baseball bats and guns, and boom, shooting and hitting, smashing everything. And so basically, the long story short is I had to leave my hometown at gunpoint. So I left Louisville at gunpoint. And we said, what do we do? And we said, let's go back to New York City. Now, I'm a 19-year-old idiot, barely figure out how to put a pair of shoes on. And I'm going to New York City, wound up down in the Lower East Side when it was still pretty much a war zone, pretty rough, and had the time of my life. They never got the music back together. They were a little afraid, I think, to try and get, too wrapped up in New York life. So one day I got bored, and I said, well, I'm just going to take my drumsticks and walk around Greenwich Village. So I got my drumsticks and walked around. And the famous part of this story for me is that I came home and I was in 5 bands. I had guys running from across the street. Hey man, you play drums? I'm like, yeah. Can you be in our band? And I was like, okay. And I go home. And so started playing around New York City. And every time I would do a gig, people who were there would come to me and say, look, we want you in our band. I can play drums good, I admit. And I can swing. I do like jazzy stuff. And that's not easy to do, really. And so when people saw this, I wound up in this theatrical group doing a lot of like Cole Porter type stuff and playing brushes and everything. And one night I'm playing a gig there in west side of Louisville, west side of New York, in this loft space, that real shushy thing. You go up this secret elevator, and it opens and then you go in, there's the brick walls and the little bar, and everybody's laying on pillows, and then there's a stage, and it's in someone's loft, really cool. And I'm playing, and there's this guy standing right in front of me, just staring at me, won't look away. He got this blue sharkskin suit on, and he got a Superman haircut with a little blue tinted, curl right there in the front. And he's looking at me, won't look away, and I'm going, dude, man, this guy's like getting on my nerves. And tried to get away from him during the break, and he grabbed me. He says, look, I've got to talk to you. I says, what? He says, I got a band, just came in from London. They're going to be really big. We're playing at Max's Kansas City, which was a nightclub in New York called Max's Kansas City. They said, we're going to be playing there in 10 days, and our drummer couldn't come. Could you please go meet the guy? I said, no, I'm too busy, man. Forget it. He goes, please. So he talked me into it. So I went over, and a couple of days later, I went down the Letter Avenues and beat on this old banged up metal door. I hear the stairs somebody come down the stairs, and this kid opens the door, and he's got this greaser kid with his pompadour and greasy hair, and he's got like pink pants on and like a black shirt with little silver sparkles in it. And I'm like, it was this guy, and he goes, come on up, mate. And he's British, right? And there's all these Britain kids, these Cottony kids from Britain, and they're going to be playing at Max's Kansas City, and they're going to be playing rockabilly music. They're called Levi and the Rockettes was the name of the band. I'm dating myself now. And I heard him. I said, okay. So we did the gig, and it was a massive success. The next day, an article came out in the Village Voice saying this band's going to be really big. So I'm trying to, abbreviate the story to my best ability, believe me. So anyway, we wound up in being moved to Los Angeles. So we started to just really took off in New York. Our management moved us to LA. And so we moved to, I was living at the Tropicana Hotel, the very famous rock and roll hotel. And during its heyday, I had my own little bungalow. Tom Waits was right down the way. He and I were friends. He really respected my music. I was making demos by then, playing everything, all the instruments, guitar and drums. And he heard it. His friend Chucky Weiss, that Chucky's in Love song, Chucky Weiss played it for him. And he pulled up in his old Thunderbird one day, and I was sitting out front of my place. He goes, "Man, you made that music?" I go, "Man, that's good shit, man." And we got to be friends. And then little by little, I'm making my way up in LA, start playing drums, session drums at Universal Studios for recordings for people. And the band became phenomenally large. I mean, it was just crazy, man. It was crazy. And excuse me. We went to London to do some gigs, and I got sick over there, and we weren't living in very good conditions. And I'd met a woman, and when I was playing with the band in San Francisco, this strange Chinese woman walks up on the stage, a little bit older, and she's got like black hair going down like this, down to her knees, face painted white, black lips, black leather coat going to her knees, black stiletto boots on, comes walking up to me on the stage, like looks like a ghost. And I'm behind after the gig, I'm helping my drums get torn down, and she comes up on the stage and she says, "May I ask you 2 questions?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "What is your date, and place, and time of birth?" And I told her I happen to know the time of my birth. And then she said, "Okay, and what is your phone number?" And I said, gave her my number. She said, "Thank you, my name is Skinner. Goodbye." And she walked off. And I was like, "That's good." And so a couple of days later, I'm back in LA. Sorry, excuse me. And the phone rings. She says, "I'm that woman that asked you for your birth data." I said, "Yeah." She said, "Can I send you something in the mail?" I said, "Yeah." So 2 days later, I go to my room, and there's a box in front of my door. Open it up, it's full of paintbrushes, right? Now, I really thought myself to still be an artist, I thought the music thing was a fluke. I know I loved playing drums, but I really, in those days, I was pretty set on being an artist in my life. And there's this box of paintbrushes. And I called her up and I said, "How did you know I'm really an artist?" She said, "I know a lot about you, and I got to talk to you right now. It's really important." And I said, "Okay." And so she said, "I'll be in LA in an hour." And she came from San Francisco and came knocking on my door. We went out for coffee. And she said, "Look, I got to tell you right now, don't let this music business suck you in and steal your power. It will, it could. And this is not your true destiny. There's something else you're going to do that's much more important for humanity." And I said, "Well, good. I'm glad to hear that." And I actually kind of felt that. I didn't know what it would be, but, I felt like, yeah, man, I'm here. I feel inspired, I felt that my whole life. And then she told me this. So then we're in London, and I got sick, cold, and I called her, and I hadn't talked to her since then. This is like maybe 4 or 5 months later. I called her and I said, "Sharon, I'm in London." She said, "I'll be there." So she landed in London. I met her in this little hamburger joint I would go to, and we walked through the rain to a hotel and got a hotel, and we wound up staying in there for a few months and fell in love. And so we came back, and then the band finally said, "We're going back to LA." And Sharon, so during the time in London, Sharon and I would walk to this antiquarian bookstore, and she would buy tons of books on mysticism. And so she had me read. We would just read every night. We'd get in bed, and it was just raining all the time. There was nothing to do in London. The band wasn't playing. I felt bad for the other musicians. They were just squatting somewhere in the rain. And but she had me start reading all the books of like Carl Jung and the Tao Te Ching and all the great classics, Pearl Buck, and all the great, the great mastery books of Europe, and a lot of mysticism. And that's where she introduced me to, the beginning of my real life, I guess you'd say, and for sure. And so we went through that for about 6 weeks, and then the band was supposed to go back to LA. So I said goodbye to her, which I thought would be maybe goodbye. And I came back to LA we came back to bigger fanfare because our management had made this this story that we were out touring around the world and that we were famous. And the weird thing was that, like, when the band was like, we were like squatting, we had nothing. We were skinny as a rail, we were broke, we were in the rain. Yet our manager would walk in the door with some magazine that just came out in Japan, in Tokyo, like a full 60-page magazine of just us, pictures of us. And it was so weird. They're squatting in the rain in London with nothing. And he'd walk in the door, look, boys, you just came to Tokyo. Oh God, like that's fame. So we came back to LA to the same thing. It was like this just incredible fanfare. And the band started to fall apart. Our management started to fight each other. Everything went wrong. And I called her one day and said, I'm quitting. She said, that's right, come up. So I came to San Francisco. I landed there on a cold, windy day in the Greyhound bus and looked at the Tenderloin and thought, oh my God, I made a mistake. And I walk into her apartment and it's just a little shotgun rundown place. She really didn't have the kind of money that put us in that nice hotel room in London, but she actually lived by very meager means. And suddenly I found myself in her little kitchen and, just a little, gypboard table and some fold up chairs and papers piled up in there and a little bitty kitchen in San Francisco. And I'm going, oh God, what did I do? I said, I think I want to go back to LA. She said, no, you can't. You're not going back to LA. You're going to start your new life. I said, oh man. So she would always say something that would just make me go, okay, and break my spell to make me not want to go back. And so I moved in with her, and we got married. And all we would do was read books on mysticism. So then when we got married, it was 1985, and she said, we're going to go to China for our honeymoon. I said, let's go. So she said, but my parents are going to come along as our chaperones. I said, all right. So we did our honeymoon with our parents there because they could speak the language and get us around. And so the four of us went, and we wound up in traveling to the north where all the Chinese herbs grow, up in the Manchurian province. That's the place, the protected areas where the great Chinese herbs grow, in the mountains up there. It's kind of a geographic situation similar to like Maine or Vermont, way up north near the North Korea. Well, we took a train up there, and we're in this town of Jilin, which is where all the herbs are harvested, come into town. And we're rolling into town in our little tour bus, and I see these old mule carts, these wooden mule carts with these peasants on them. There's pal with roots of ginseng and astragalus and things I didn't know what they were at the time, all still glistening with mud where they've just been picked. And these people are rolling into town with these mule carts in every direction. And I'm like, God, I was fascinated looking out the windows, taking pictures of them. So that night we're in our hotel room, and our hotel room had no windows. It was just cinder block walls. But it had all these overblown American furniture, and they're really trying to please us. This was still communist China way back. And I got insomnia as usual, and I decided to take a walk. So I stepped out of the hotel, took a left, and was walking along back where I would look at the back of my wall in my room. And there was an alley. Turns out all of those mule carts had come into that alley, or at least many of them had. And that alley was full of these mule carts next to each other in the dark dirt road, dirt floor alley, the old wooden carts. And they all had these little propane flames for light. And the peasants are sitting there, and the clothes that looked like burlap bags are just wrapped over them, tied with ropes, the same on their heads and on their feet. And they're just like these ancient looking people, man. And they're sitting there with the little propane flame lighting up their faces. And I just stumbled into this. Oh God, I was walking back thousands of years. And I became really smitten by, I got to find out what this is. And in the lobbies of all the hotels, there were always a lot of reishi mushrooms. I didn't know what they were at the time, these big reishis. And they were always displayed everywhere as if they were like the most favorite thing, And so Sharon and I came back to San Francisco, and she said, let's make herbal tinctures. And I said, yeah. So we walked down into Chinatown, and we bought a book. By this time, it was early 1986. We bought a book by a guy named Ron Teeguarden, and it was called Chinese Tonic Herbs. You know what? I have the book.
We used to sell that at the bookshop I worked at. Yeah.
This is the book I bought.
There it is. Right. Paperback.
Yeah. So we started making tinctures of, we'd go to Chinatown and get Ho Shou Wu, astragalus, all these herbs we were learning about in this book, making tinctures. Now, and we used ginseng, really good ginseng, Panache ginseng from China, which you could still get in those days. And I remember taking the tinctures, and I worked at an architecture firm at the time, and I rode my bike there, and I had to go up all the way up Potrero Hill to get up there. And I just remember riding up the trail hill going, wait a minute, this ain't the usual. I just right up the mountain on my bike, right? I said, man, there's something. So that was my beginning in tonic herbalism, starting about 1985. And so then she and I won't go through the details, but we had a miraculous breakup. One day I started our relationship because it wasn't romantic, and I was just, I'd been a rock and roller, right? And I kind of wanted to have some nice times, and enjoy life a bit in that world of like dating and all, and I didn't have any of that. So, and we were married, and then I felt kind of stifled there, and she knew it. And one day some stuff occurred, and I came home and I walked in my apartment, and there she was waiting, and she said, "You can go." I went, "Really?" Goes, "Yeah, it's time." She goes, "I'm done teaching you. You were done. You've learned what you need to learn here. You can go and live your life as you want." I said, "Okay." So I got an apartment directly across the hall, and spent another 6 months or so in San Francisco. I made my way back to LA. The day I arrived in LA, I rolled into town going, "There's no way I could ever be involved in the music scene that I was in before, so forget that." And 2 hours later, I was back in one of the most popular bands in Los Angeles. I do not understand how. But I went to, my brother called me as I was rolling into LA and said, "I'm at Studio 54 right now. There's a party. You should come." And I walk into the party, and there's a drum set sitting there with nobody on it. And I sit down and play, and this guy's standing over me, just like the guy in New York had done. And he's like, "I want you in my band." It was literally an hour after I arrived back in LA. And I was back through the door, the Whiskey, the Viper Room, all the clubs, playing with the most popular, some of the top session musicians in LA, John Bryan, Lily Hayden. They were all come through this band as a big tent band. And so anyway, one night now, I'm going to skip the part about my dad getting sick, but I found out he had cancer, and I wanted to help him, and I tried to use green juicing, and it really revived him. But unfortunately, his wife in Kentucky did not follow him, didn't believe in me, and he didn't make it. But I saw what simple natural medicine had done for my dad. Simple green juice had done for him to do a lot to revive him in many ways. So I sought to become a healer, and so I lived at the Los Angeles Eco Village. By coincidence, I happen to live in a little ecological community, and the woman there put me through a University of California Master Gardeners program. So I became a Master Gardener, and then she made me the CSA Gardener for the Eco Village. So I was running a little CSA. So then I started going every day to sick people's homes who had cancer, and I would just let myself listen. My whole way of beginning as a healer was to say, I'm going to listen, and if somebody says in my earshot, says, "Oh, my brother, sister, uncle, father is sick in some way," I will take it that I heard that for a reason, and I will go and I will let myself initiate into the conversation and ask if they'd like that person to see me. And if they say yes, I'll go. And sure enough, an hour or two later, somebody goes, "Oh, I just found out my uncle has blah, blah." And so I kind of was, "Do you think that I could talk with them and they'd like to see me? Maybe I could help." And it was always like, "Yeah, sure." And so I go, and I would say to the person, "Do you want to live?" And it was the way they said yes that I knew they would make it or not. And so this was in the year 1994. I started working as a green juicing therapist. I would go take my stuff I grew to their home with my old Champion juicer. I did about usually 3 people at a time around LA, and go there, juice for them, come back the next day, do another. I never charged anybody anything. I just wanted to figure out if I could help and be a healer. And I saw a lot of people, reviving, and other people didn't. So then I did this for 5 years. And I read all the books by the juicing master doctors like Bernard Jensen, Dr. Walker, Dr. Heinemann, Cherry Calbaum, and all those people. And I saw that, doctors had been using this stuff. So I was like, well, how come the medical industry doesn't think about it? But then I figured out later on, well, they're not interested in it. But so by 1998, I had a woman who had multiple sclerosis, and that's an autoimmune disease. And I was giving her the juice, and she came out and said, Dean, I love the juice. I have more energy, but my legs are freezing up more, and my doctors are telling me not to stimulate my immune system. And I went, there's something wrong. There's something not exactly correct there. I got to figure out what it is. I need to help this person. And I went into a meltdown because I thought, I had this kind of weird panacea, but I didn't really know what I was doing. It seemed like everybody always got better. Suddenly I'm hurting somebody. And I thought, I'm a charlatan. I'm a quack. I don't know jackass. And so I made a prayer in the morning. I said, God, I need a teacher. I need somebody to teach me. But I set a condition. I said, but I want to learn the deepest healing system that there is. That's what I want to learn. Well, that very night, I swear, I'm not kidding. That same night, I was asked to go play guitar at the Besant Lodge, Annie Besant's place, who's a big hero of mine. She's a spiritual, I think she's one of my spirit guides, actually, is Annie Besant. And it was in Beechwood Canyon, this beautiful little chapel that's been there since the late 1800s. And I went there to play guitar, and about 10 people there watching. And then afterward, they said, now, folks, for your entertainment, Master Herbalist Ron Teeguarden is here to speak. And I went, the guy who, this book. And I was like, oh, and I watched him and I was mesmerized. He only talked for 10 or 15 minutes. He looked a little bit annoyed because there was hardly anyone there. And I went up to him afterward and said, sir, I'm a fan. And he looked at me and he goes, come tomorrow. And I came over to his house the next day. This was 1998. And he was still writing his newest book, The Ancient Wisdom of the Tonic Herbs. And he was up there working on it in his room. And he said, go make a tea for me. And I went down, and this guy named Chris, who worked for him, showed me how to make this very complicated tea in a big pressure cooker thing. It took about 3 hours to make it with Chinese herbs, boiling them and sealing them in a little pouch. I took it up to Ron, and he took a sip and he went, you're my tea master. And he goes, that's the fastest apprenticeship in history. It's usually 2 years. I said, he goes, 2 hours, 2 years. Okay. So I became a personal tea master for 8 years. And I learned the Gate of Life lineage, which is our lineage of herbalism. And it is a traditional 8-year direct master pupil apprenticeship. That's the way it's been taught all these thousands of years. Ever since 2975 BC is when the first Materia Medica was written in China by a guy named Shen Nong. And since then, it was always an 8-year apprenticeship between master pupil. I received this. I don't know how. This guy from Shively, Kentucky, I just don't know how, but I became his personal apprentice for 8 years. He gave me a title. I think I'm the only other person he's ever given a title to. He gave me a title of superior herbalist. And he and I today are dear friends. I love him more than anyone in the world, and always will. And he loves me. So I was there with him for 8 years, and I ran his elixir bar. I was his manager of his elixir bar. So we opened the first elixir bar at Erewhon. I managed that. There was a young guy named Truth Calkins that I taught, who went on to become the manager later and became kind of famous in that. But we started that elixir bar there, and that's starting now to kind of like, people are really getting that idea. The idea of elixir bars is finally taking off. I thought it would have happened sooner, actually, but everything's in the right time. And so then in 2006, it was 8 years, and that was the traditional apprenticeship. And I was called to go on my own by very many indicators. I didn't really want to. Ron didn't want me to leave. I didn't want to, but I was compelled to go on my own. And I went out the door, and I basically committed to never try and usurp his notoriety, in any way. I wanted to always be known as his, he's the master. He's the Copernicus, and I'm maybe the Galileo, it turns out, because I've kind of brought it out to the world, And so I went out and went back into Erewhon. I was selling things there, and I created a little company called Shaman Shack Herbs, and it just really took off like crazy. I just remember getting people signing up to my newsletter, like 20 or 30 a day. I was like, gosh, this is amazing. And I was doing really well. And so I spent the last number of years doing Shaman Shack. And so now where I'm at today is that I sort of hit the end of my road with Shaman Shack. My partner and I are not getting along. I decided to just disassociate myself from it, and I wanted to move forward. So I created a new line of herbal tonics, which you've seen, Allie, I believe.
Yes.
These these new
Beautiful.
formulas of mine.
Yeah,
And
they're beautiful and they're delicious.
yeah,
Yeah, they're delicious. And I'll just say that for me, everyone that I've had from you,
yeah,
it just has a resonance that I don't find in any other product. And that's just from sincerity, you know, and you know me well, and we've connected many times, and I've shared about other things that I enjoy also. And just your genuine wisdom. It's your genuine wisdom. And for those who are listening, I've had private consultation where we've gone through and I've sat with him and the different herbs, and he's looked at the meridians and he's spoken to me, and we've had this real connection, and a learning, you know, a real understanding of okay, what's flowing in the body, or what's trapped in the body right now, or what organs, what things are needing chi, and all of that. And you always come forward with such genuine compassion.
Thank you.
You know, and I've had the pleasure of seeing you with other people in consultation, and the variety of people. There isn't anyone from any walk of life that I have not seen you touch.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much.
And that has always touched my heart. Truly, truly. I mean, and I've always, since I had the pleasure of meeting you, I always have thought of you as someone that the world should know, because always you have had such heart. The resonance of your heart is so profound. And as I got to know you and know your story and know, you know, the beauty, to me, it's just the beauty of who you are and where you come from, and all of the things that your life has brought you to expressing. And then to know you and to know the excellence at the level. I mean, I cannot encourage you all enough to find Dean's artwork, to find him on Facebook and see him playing his music, and to really go look at his new website. And he has a new book right now called Raw Chi that's out. Yeah, I think you gotta have, yeah, yep. So balancing your health with raw food and herbalism. I just can't say enough, truly, about how you have touched my heart, and how just genuine and beautiful and sincere and humble you are, as you stand as this expression of so much magnificence in so many ways. So I truly honor you and celebrate you. And I feel so honored to have you be here and to share in this podcast and to let the world get to meet you in this way.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Allie.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I want to add a little thing here. Dean was a dear friend, and during my pregnancy, my first and only, Dean, a dear friend, and providing all kinds of wonderful tonics and elixirs just to, you know, boost everything. I didn't have any illnesses or anything of that nature, but just was very focused on providing all the nourishment and everything for the body at that time. And the loving care that you held me with, and all of the things that you gave to me to help me, things that were supporting my body, but also just my heart, because of your genuine, nurturing love.
Thank you.
Like that, I treasure that, and I will always, always treasure that.
Thank you so much, Allie. I mean, we have to all do our part now to help the generations to come, you know, to help them have strong immunity, strong adaptability, and the ingenuity and the creativity to deal with the future world. And it's our part, you know, it's my part to support you, the coming new people. They're coming in, you know, they're coming through you, a conscious mother, you know, the child has a conscious mother. This child has a chance to actually do something for this planet. And when, you know, the tonic herbs are, they help empower you, you know, particularly reishi mushroom, which we gave you. Very famous in China too. You're considered blessed if you can have reishi during a pregnancy in China, because the baby is going to have a very peaceful countenance and a deep sense of connection to things, and then also stronger immunity. So it's a really important thing.
Yes, and I'll testify to that,
Uh-huh.
that I truly did have a very blessed birth. He
Mhm.
has slept peacefully since his birth. He is a beautiful rested sleeper. He is a very balanced child. He's incredibly intelligent, and he has never been sick. He has never even had a cold. Yeah. And I've actually, the holistic practitioners here who've seen him, they've said, this is incredible. We don't know what, it's great. It's great because normally, by the time a child is a toddler, is 2 years old, they've had enough of the sniffles and all of these things. But I'm just like, no, he was having his teething and that normal teething stuff, but never. And I really truly believe what you have taught. You also, not only are you giving us tonics and stuff, but you have books.
Mhm.
And I encourage anyone to actually learn from you, truly learn from you. And as you take it into your heart and you believe this and you connect to it, and if I can just even add the resonance of the wisdom of the plants,
Mhm.
when we align and actually consume the wisdom of the plants, with consciousness, with our consciousness, right, in union with our consciousness, that is what is permeating our cells and our physicality. And I believe that that's part of the reason why I've had so much balance and peace in utilizing your formulas. And then to see my son, who's just been
Wow,
fabulous and very well and very healthy. And so,
that is great.
yeah.
Yeah, congratulations. But it was you. I mean, you were the one who, came for, that support to me, and so that it was a symbiotic relationship,
Yes.
that you had the intent, you have to have the intent. There are times when women are pregnant, and I suggest it, but they're not ready and they don't know. And I think, gosh, I wish they knew, but they don't. So you can't push it,
No, no.
But yeah,
But it's beautiful because you are so open.
yeah,
You have such an open heart.
yeah.
And you can receive the yes and you can receive the no, and you're still out there glowing with your open heart, ready to receive those who are ready.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know?
All of
Yeah.
all different stages in our evolution, and it really is like a matter of like frequencies. We're attracted to certain frequencies with each other. People on a certain oscillating on a certain frequency are going to wind up seeing each other and running into each other through this magic
Yes.
called life.
Yes. Yes. I would also love, I remember you sharing with me, because I know that a lot of our audience have a lot of deep spiritual personal experiences also.
Yeah.
Um, and you shared with me really the download of a lot of this ancient wisdom that came through to you in addition to your traditional teaching.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if you want to just touch on that just a little bit, maybe about, because I think that that's encouraging to other people who are having their own awareness right within them, that they are reawakening
Mm-hmm.
to wisdom that they have carried innately that maybe is just turning on.
Yeah.
And to hear that another has had that experience and is integrating it into their current life, I think is really, really exciting and valuable.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, one of the first impulses I ever had about how I could help others was, I had this one night in a dream state. I heard, I'm here to inspire people. That's what I want to do. I want to inspire people. And so a little bit of inspiration goes so far. But we're living in a world right now where people are fed so much trivia and disinformation and useless stuff every day that it winds up presenting an opportunity for us to actually hand someone a nugget of some kind of truth that should be just a common, but it winds up being revelatory because they're given so much banality that when we're able, now it's an opportunity for us to say, well, here, check out this little walnut and what's inside of it. and people can grasp that, like, oh my God, it's something real, and it really changed their lives. So for when the problems we face with the mass production of banality on in the media and everything, and the mass intention to kind of catch us up in that, it presents an opportunity for us to go, oh, but here, check this out, this nugget, and that can be a little nugget of that truth, can be like what the Japanese call a Zen koan. It's like it's like a little poem that doesn't seem to make any sense, and you say it to somebody, and then they go, huh? And because it doesn't make sense, they kind of go, huh? And then a week later, 2 weeks later, a year later, 10 years later, 30 years later, they go, bing, oh, and it's this revelatory moment. That's what it was about. And it opens up that little nugget, that little Zen koan opened a universe. And that's what we have in front of us now. We're capable of doing this because people are so desperately wanting to hear some truth. Here are some simple truths, And when and the great thing, the great fortune I had was I found those simple truths in the Tao Te Ching, the Tao. And the Tao holds those simple truths. It actually goes to that core, that nugget. And the great translation of the Tao is the one by Witterbiner. That's the great one. It's called The Way of Life According to Lao Tzu by Witterbiner. That's the great translation. The other really good one is by Lin Yu Tang, but that's hard one to find. Those, you get that nugget of those. The Chinese philosophical mentality is to, how can we boil the complex down to the most simple equation? The same with Chinese herbalism. How do we look at all of the osises and itises and break it all down to one? It's called qi stagnation. When qi, sunlight, is stuck somewhere, it causes one of the osises or one of the itises. and that's the root of it, is that that vital flow of qi through our body is stuck somewhere. Atherosclerosis, cirrhosis, right? So that is, well, what do? We seek to go into the bloodstream generally and help assist the unblocking of that full flow. We don't look at right at the osis itself. We look at breaking up the qi stagnation. The same with the Tao Te Ching. Let's get to the very root of this whole thing, and set a foundational core for your ethical foundation that you can stand on for your life, your whole life, And those are the wisdoms that Sharon, gave me, long ago when I was a rock and roll, almost suicide. And man, but if we can all touch one person, and my dharma in this life is very one-on-one. That's one reason why I'm not. You were saying that I'm not real well known. It's because I think my dharma is to be very close one-on-one, like you and I are right now, and our friend here, the technician, as well. And so we're conveying this information, but now we can share it. But of course, those people who are on our frequency are supposed to hear this. We're the ones that hear it, and we're able to reach out through them through this form of inspiration, which is beautiful. Yeah,
it's very, very beautiful. And so I also remember in our sharing, sometime when we were sitting, we were just talking about how our soul is so expansive and so present when we're willing to sit with another in that same state and that resonance, and so many gifts and wisdom that are kind of just not as easily accessible to us on a regular basis, sometimes actually do get activated and awakened in the presence of another. Mm-hmm. That and for your story about the passion and the feeling in China, and I remember having a conversation with you before where you said that you had really strong intuitive wisdom come through you, as though this is ancient wisdom you have carried in your own soul, mm-hmm. well beyond this lifetime.
Yeah.
So it was such a familiarity when you were there in China, and that curiosity. It's like that's still that curiosity that you had as the child in Kentucky that was led to the forest. To me, it's still really speaking to the resonance of your own soul, who's had lifetimes and lifetimes with ancient wisdom and communion with the plants and the earth, and that wisdom really does, for me, it comes through when someone is in a consultation with you, when someone is experiencing the gifts that you do have in this way. It's not like I'm just going into a normal, hi, I'm just here and care. Do you want this one, this one, this one? There's another level to this. And I really want our listeners to really just know that it's really something special. And if it's something you are interested in, definitely get to know Rehmannia, because it's just a special thing, and a very special gift you are to the world, and this open and loving heart that you are. So thank you so much for filling my life with music and painting and novels and education and books and tinctures and herbalism, and your beautiful view of life through the eyes of love that you always share. So thank you so much. I hope everyone leaves today's show with a lot of inspiration. Just a lot of inspiration, peace in your heart, renewed sense of love. And please find Rehmannia on rdeanthomas.com. You can check out the links here with the video to find more information about him. And thank you so much for coming today, and we look so forward to having you back again.
Thank you.
Love and blessings to you.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much.
Grateful.
All right. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you so much.